Now to start this tutorial, I need first to set my aircraft panel state to cold and dark using my CDU. As you can see, the menu page comes as a default page when we load the aircraft. So we are in the right page to start navigating to the panel state. Now I select PMDG setup. Then here I got panel state load. I select it. And as you can see on the top of the panel states list, I got cold and dark option. Finally, I select it, then execute. Now I give it a few seconds to initialize the system. And here we go. As you can see, all the system is in cold and dark. Now, this is the state at which we normally start our first flight of the day. The very first place to start the power up procedure is the overhead panel, starting with the battery. Goes on. Now, before applying any AC power source to the aircraft system, I need to check a few items for safety and protection purpose. Starting with the electrical primary hydraulic and the manned pump switches are off. Moving down to the two wiper selectors are checked off. Gear lever position down. Alternate flaps selector off. Now I have completed the safety check. All what I need at this stage is to decide whether I'm gonna use the APU or the external power source. Let's see first the power up procedure using the external sources. You can see here the two external power switches indicators are dark. This means that the aircraft is still not connected to the ground power units. To request the connection, I need to use my FMS CDU through the menu page. Click and hold the menu key to bring the menu page to life. I select FS Actions, then Ground Connections. Here you can see that the options are grayed out. To enable them, I need to set first the wheel chocks. And you can see now the connection options are available. Now here you can see for ground power type we have two options, one plug and two plugs. When you select GPU one plug, you'll get a single GPU plug. I'll select ground two plugs. And you can see I got now dual jetway plugs available. Now I connect them and you can see the two green available lights illuminate. Primary external power goes on and the secondary on. Nav light on. ADRU on. Emergency lights armed. Window heat all on. Cabin utility and in-flight entertainment on. Now the power system will go through a self-check and diagnostic process, and this can take some time. If you wish to make this process faster, you can go to the CDU menu page, PMDG Setup, Options, Simulation, step through the pages and look for Display Units Power Up. Here it is. Change it from realistic to fast. Done. Now after connecting the external power, I go to Display Select Panel. I select Electrical to bring the electrical synaptic on the lower display unit and check that the electrical system is configured as expected. Now my electrical power is set. At this stage, if the air conditioning is needed, I have to connect the ground air conditioning to the system, but on the air conditioning panel, first I check that the packs and recirculation fans are off, and they are. Now I go to my CDU. On the same ground connections page I used before, I select air conditioning unit. Now this is generally the power up steps using the external sources. Now let's see the other way we can use to power up the system using APU. After turning on the battery and completing the before power safety check as I showed you already, now first I check that the APU generator switch is on. This arms the APU generator for automatic power connection to the electrical system when APU power is available. Now I turn the APU start selector to start. The starter springs back to on, and this will initiate the APU start process. And you can see we have no indications available to monitor the APU start progress. All the displays are still dark, and this is normal. When the APU start cycle is completed, the displays comes to life as you can see now. And the system starts the self-check as we saw earlier with the external power. Now again I go to display select panel and select electrical to bring the electrical synaptic to view and check that the electrical system is configured properly. After establishing the electrical power, I follow the same procedure as I did earlier with the external power. Nav light on, aid roue on, emergency lights armed, window heat on, cabin utility and IFE switches on. Finally, I check on the air synaptic display that the air conditioning is established. As you can see, all set. After completing the electrical power procedure, I select status from the display select panel and I check the hydraulic quantity to ensure that no amber refill indications are shown. Then I check the crew oxygen pressure to ensure it's sufficient for the flight. Then I go back to secondary engine display and check the engine oil quantity for a minimum of 22 quarts. Now at this stage I can start my FMC preflight. During this FMC preflight I'll be using the Simbrief operational flight plan, and I got this in PDF format as you can see here, which includes all the required informations for the FMC preflight inputs. When the CDU is powered during the electrical power-up procedure, as we saw in the previous tutorial, the menu page is the default page that it starts with. Now, before I select FMC function, while I'm already on the menu page, what I always like to do here is to complete first the aircraft loading by selecting FS actions, which takes me to this page, and all what I need in order to complete the aircraft loading is putting the planned fuel and the payload. Let's start with the fuel. Now, using my Simbrief flight plan document, I scroll down to my planned fuel section and find my block fuel, which is right here, 75,628 pounds. I can round it to 75,700 and put it here on the total fuel line select. Done. Now I select return to go back to FS actions page. Then I select payload. And what I need here is putting my zero fuel weight under ZFW line select field. To find my planned zero fuel weight, I look at the first page of my flight document. Here it is, 389,074 pounds. And I need to put this in thousands of units, which means 389.1, and put it here. The last thing I want to do here is to cross-check my FMC calculated gross weight, which is 464,800 pounds, with the flight plan document by adding my estimated takeoff weight and taxi weight, which gives me 464,702 pounds, which is 464.7 in thousands of units, and they're roughly the same. At this point, my aircraft loading is done and checked. Now I can move to the FMC to start the preflight. So I select menu, then FMC. It takes me to item page where we normally start our FMC preflight. In this page, I check a few items that are very important, which can affect the validation of all the FMC computation. First, I check both the aircraft model and engine rating to ensure that they match those on my flight plan document. You can see here I got the Boeing 777-200 LR model with the General Electric 90-110 Bravo 1 engine rating and the match. The next important element we want to verify is our active nav database here, and we check the expiry date. As you can see, it's on March 24th, 2022, and we are on 23rd of March, which fall in this date range, so we are good. Moving down to performance factor. For the performance factor, I got no correction as my fuel bias on my document showing all zeros. Ident page is complete. Now I can move to the next page, which is POS init. I put my departure airport identifier on the ref airport line select. For the IRS alignment, we need to put the most accurate position, and this can be either the published coordinates for the gate if we are at, or the GPS position. For instance, I'm gonna select the GPS pause. I copy this to my scratch pad, then put it in set inertial pause line select. And you can see on my navigation display, time to align is about 7 minutes. If you want to make the alignment faster or even instant, you can go to your CDU menu page, then select PMDG Setup, Options, Simulation, and here you can select IRS options, and you can see mine is set to realistic, but you can select fast or instant. After completing the POS init page, I go to route page and start building my flight plan using my flight plan document. Let me find my routing. Here it is. I'll put exactly this on my FMC route page, starting with the origin and destination. From CYUL to CYVR. My flight number is FSS 001. The departure runway is 06 right. Now to understand what I'll be doing, I'm simply entering the route exactly as it's shown here. You're gonna see something very interesting that you may encounter when putting the route waypoints. Just bear with me so you don't miss this tip. Now watch for this. You can see here I have to put a waypoint that has coordinates. Now if I put this in the same format as shown on my document, FMC will reject it. You see here, invalid entry. And the reason because I didn't put it in the right way. Here is how you can put the coordinates. Instead of following this sequence, you need to start with latitude index, then its number, then longitude index followed by its number. For instance, the correct format will be north 48, west 080. Now I'll put this and you will see the entry will be valid. Continuing my route entries, after completing my route, I check for discontinuity, then I select activate, then execute. I go to progress page and cross-check my trip total distance with my flight document and see if they match. So my FMC gives me 2008 miles, and on my document I got here the ground distance is 2022 miles, which they are roughly the same. Now moving to the performance initialization page, I put my zero fuel weight by selecting the ZFW line select key. It brings automatically the value to scratch pad. Then I put it below the ZFW line. My fuel reserves are 10,927 pounds. I'll round it to 11,000. My planned cruising altitude is flight level 400. I put it in cruise alt line select. My cost index is 38. I put it in cost index line select. Here I got -37 degrees Celsius, minimum fuel temperature for freezing point, and this depends on the type of our loaded fuel. If we know what type of fuel we are using, we can refer to the correct minimum fuel temperature. So I leave it as it is, assuming that is the correct one. Cruise CG is estimated at 14%. For the step climb, I prefer to put 0 since I'm not using it in this flight. Now I have completed the perf init page. I go now to thrust limit page. This page requires a full takeoff analysis that usually is completed with the assistance of onboard performance tool, commonly known as OPT. But to keep it simple today, I leave it as it is with full takeoff and climb ratings. Thrust limit page is complete. I can move now to the takeoff page. I put 5 for takeoff flaps. I click on CG line select key to bring its value in the scratch pad, then another click to copy it to CG boxes. The FMC automatically computes the takeoff stabilizer trim 2.75 units and the takeoff speeds. For the runway position shift, I leave it to 0 since I'll be using the full length of the runway. My estimated takeoff gross weight is 463,302 pounds. I'll put this in thousands of units, 463.3 here in takeoff gross weight line select. Now before I confirm my takeoff speeds, I need to go to page 2 to complete and put some useful information to assist the FMC for more accurate computation. Starting with the wind, the reported surface wind today is from 070 at 6 knots. I put it in the wind line select, and the FMC calculates the wind components here below the runway wind. Today's runway slope is 0 with dry conditions. I put that here. Finally, I put the actual outside temperature, which is 15 degrees Celsius. Now for the acceleration and reduction heights, these depend on the noise abatement departure procedure, and it takes another video to explain this. For the purpose of this video, I'll leave it as it is. Now I step back to the first takeoff page and confirm my takeoff speeds by clicking on their associated line select keys. Now I'm done with the takeoff page. Now this is the basics of the PMDG 777 FMC Preflight. I'm gonna add some tips when I get to the next tutorials during the Preflight procedure. If you are interested to continue following my upcoming tutorials, make sure to activate the notification bell so you don't miss the next tutorial. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.